For the last century, through a variety of publications, the Springfield Diocese has informed parishioners with local, national, and international news that's been important to their lives and their Catholic faith. As this year marks the 100th anniversary of the publication's ministry, Steve Kiltonic traces its history in the diocese and explains how the printed word has evolved here over the years.
It was November 1920, and Warren Harding had just been elected president in a landslide. In the midst of a celebration, the Springfield Diocese published its first official publication, the Catholic Mirror. A few months earlier, Springfield Bishop Thomas Bevan and Michael J. Shea, the editor of the Knights of Columbus's KC Mirror magazine, planned the new publication with a revised policy, aim, and purpose. The mission of the Mirror, according to Shea, was to appeal to all Catholics and to, quote, stimulate the interest of our people in Catholic activities, to spread Catholic truths, to help correct false and misleading opinions, and to present Catholic news in popular form. In that inaugural edition, which cost 10 cents, were editorials and articles on Irish independence, holy relics and baseball, a new group of young boys called the Holy Name Cadets, news about the local Knights of Columbus councils, and a tribute to Bishop Bevan, who passed away that October and never lived to see the first edition printed. A century later, the Diocesan Print Communications Ministry continues to thrive, and this year marks the 100th anniversary as the trusted source of information for Catholics of the Springfield Diocese. In an interview conducted at the residence of St. Michael's Cathedral, Fran Gagnon, a Springfield Diocese historian, said the Mirror exposed people to their faith and news which they couldn't find in the secular press, which often regarded Catholics negatively.
The world had gotten smaller after the First World War. For starters, people were the sons and daughters of immigrants or granddaughters and grandsons of immigrants, but they began to all of a sudden see what it meant to be a citizen of the planet, and that things weren't just happening in their own backyard or in their own parish.
During the Roaring '20s, the Mirror found a trusty ally in Bishop Thomas O'Leary, whom editor Shea called an unfailing friend of the Catholic press.
It is in his era that the Catholic Mirror really became it became the voice of the church. O'Leary made it that. He really foresaw the need for communications through print. He was also concerned that people had become very casual about adherence to their faith, and he saw society as being very permissive.
Appearing in the Catholic Mirror throughout the 20s and 30s were articles on various groups that were considered threats to Catholics.
The Ku Klux Klan was extremely active, and their target in those days included, among other groups, Catholics.
Another perceived threat was the spread of socialism, as evidenced by the unjust execution of Boston's immigrant socialists, Sacco and Vanzetti. The Mirror also championed the cause of the Catholic worker.
The Catholic Church, universally, was definitely supportive of workers, Catholic workers and other workers, but there was the sanctity of the working man at that time.
Many of those workers were immigrants and faced discrimination in the local mills at the hands of factory owners. These were some of the many issues that Catholics read about in the pages of the Mirror. Michael Shea was the driving force behind the Catholic Mirror. As editor and publisher, he produced 406 issues, the last in March 1952, before retiring. The crusading Shea was praised for 3 decades of spreading Catholic truth and defending Catholic faith. In November 1954, the monthly Catholic Mirror was transformed into the weekly newspaper, The Catholic Observer, a name chosen by diocesan priests. Its first editor was James Waters. The Observer was established in response to the information explosion, which required more extensive treatment of the Catholic news than the secular media offered. Father Bill Pomerleau, author of Sketches of a Church, A Brief History of the Diocese of Springfield, Massachusetts, was an Observer reporter for over 20 years.
The Catholic Mirror was a very good publication, but it only came out monthly. And so it was doing more analytical things and kind of a chronicling the development of the diocese.
The Observer's broadsheet format, which ran from 16 to 32 pages, meant a lot more news and information for subscribers.
And this gave us a chance to publish things right away. Otherwise, people would read things in the secular media, and it would be a while before they'd read it in their own Catholic paper. So it was a new beginning.
In the 1950s, Father Pomerleau said the diocese was expanding physically, and it was not unusual for some issues to have stories on 3 or 4 building projects simultaneously. During the turbulent 60s, the Observer covered the civil rights movement and racial tensions in Springfield, the influx of Hispanics entering the diocese, and the Second Vatican Council, which renewed Catholics around the world.
The paper was taking on more and more the role of a real instrument of journalism.
The bishop set fundraising goals for parishes. To boost subscriptions, parishes would often engage in friendly competition. In 1973, rising production costs and changing views among readers led the Observer to convert to a bi-weekly format. A major change in the diocesan publications came in 1998 when the Catholic Communications Corporation was formed, merging the diocese's print and broadcasting components. In this new integrated newsroom model, reporters for TV and the newspaper produced stories for both media.
It was more efficient and more productive way of putting out a news product.
At the same time, social media became a reality in disseminating the news with the creation of 2 diocesan websites. In the decade of the 2000s, the sexual abuse crisis, including the resignation of Bishop Dupre, the ordination of Bishop McDonald, along with the closing of parish schools and parishes, dominated the headlines of the Observer. Rebecca Drake is a 24-year veteran of the diocesan print and TV ministries. She was named editor of the Observer in 1998.
Subscriptions to the Catholic Observer biweekly newspaper had been declining for many years. The cost of newsprint had been rising, and we were facing the same issues that even secular newspapers were facing.
After nearly 56 years, the Catholic Observer newspaper was retired, and in 2010, a full-color, bi-monthly magazine, The Catholic Mirror, was created, reviving its namesake from 90 years earlier. Drake, who is editor of The Mirror as well as news director, said the magazine is mailed out free to about 50,000 households in the diocese.
It is more focused on evangelization and features. It can't be so timely. It can't be the news that just happened. But we also consider it a historical record. So we do use important news of the diocese in the magazine.
Drake said each cover story focuses on a person living their faith or a group or ministry. In the 6 yearly issues, covers revolve usually around certain topics or events like ordinations, the sacraments, the annual ACA drive, and the Lenten, Easter, and Christmas seasons, while the late summer issue may feature youth and schools. One of the more popular features is In the Know with Father Joe, whose column deals with the issues that concern everyday Catholics. The Mirror includes lots of local news and features on a variety of topics. Drake has written many of the covers over the past decade, but some stories stick with her long after the magazine has gone to print.
Last year, around Easter time, a young woman who had been away from the church for years, who had 2 young children out of wedlock and made her way back to the church and was finally embraced. And I was overwhelmed by her knowledge of her faith and her commitment when she came back, and just, her strength.
Statistics from Faith Catholic, the Mirror's publisher, are favorable. 90% of readers find the magazine interesting, 80% spend at least 15 minutes with each edition, and say the magazine makes them feel more connected to their Catholic faith.
I've been really happy that our retirees and older people, even people who aren't retired, who value the newspaper so much, have embraced the magazine. And I get nice letters and emails and phone calls, and it means a lot to them.
Drake remains optimistic that the Catholic Mirror will never become obsolete.
I would hope that something you can hold in your hand and something you can keep is always going to be valuable.
We salute all the reporters, editors, graphic artists, sales staff, and photographers who over the past century have contributed to making the print publications of the Springfield Diocese an integral part of the everyday lives of Western Massachusetts Catholics. For Real to Real, I'm Steve Kiltonic.
Thanks, Steve. How fascinating to look back at all that's happened in Catholic journalism over the last 100 years here in the diocese. And I know that I enjoyed many years as both a reporter and executive editor of the Catholic Observer.